Can you see the screen?
Yes. So, Jeanette Metz, the floor and the screen are yours now.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you for having me too. What I want to talk to you about this afternoon is our project about vacation for children without parents in Bad Sassendorf. The headline is Trauma or Paradise, and that is because if you look into old files about Bad Sassendorf, newspaper articles or whatsoever, what you will find is that everybody likes to call Bad Sassendorf the children's paradise. Bad Sassendorf is a spa pretty much in the middle of Germany, North Rhine-Westphalia, but it is not like the other spa towns that most of you are probably thinking about talking about European spas, because we did not have famous people, emperors, kings, queens, and lords coming and seeking recreation in Bad Sassendorf. But what we had is basically sick children coming to seek recreation and to maintain healthy. What you could see in the first slide is a fountain that is based pretty much in the middle of Bad Sassendorf, well, something between a village and a town, 12,000 inhabitants at this time or at this point. And up to several years ago, even when I started here, this is the history that we would tell everybody, every guest coming to Bad Sassendorf, we would say, well, this is Bad Sassendorf. We are special because this is the place where all of the children from the Ruhr area, which is pretty much the center of the iron and steel production in Germany, were sent to become healthy again. So this is the story that I want to tell you about today, because the problem is that unfortunately the story that we've been telling for so many years might not be true. So that's what I want to talk to you about. About today's agenda. First of all, I want to explain to you what sent away children in Germany are, because the people that were sent to vacation without their parents like to call themselves Verschickungskinder. Translated, that would be sent away children. They were sent away from home for a certain amount of time, mostly between 4 to 6 weeks. Sometimes it could be a longer stay, like a couple of children had to stay away from home for up to 6 months, depending on their medical indication. Then I want to talk to you about the history of the organized vacations in Bad Sassendorf, because we have so many homes, places, bed and breakfast where the children were going to and where they were sleeping while they were having their bathing routines, medical routines in the village center. And in the end, I want to talk to you about the research project that we have with the Westphalia Wilhelms Universität and Dr. Lena Kroll and her students. This has been going on for about, I think, 4 years almost, and we took different courses during the research and developing a program. In 2020, we participated in a citizen science project that we won, and I would also like to, explain to you what we tried to use here in the sense of museum education to explain the topic of children's vacation in spa towns to people that know very little about it, but also to inform people that were victims. First of all, the Verschickungskinder, I told you already, it is children that were sent away from home for a certain amount of time. We don't know if not all of those children were actually sick. And the term Verschickungskinder is something that is actually not found if you go into the archives. It is a term that is made up and that emerged around 2017, when the Verschickungskinder and those vacations in spa towns suddenly were plopping up all over the German media. And what happened is that a lot of people that had the same memories and the same histories, they formed a group, they set up meetings, they pretty much tried to figure out how to get into the research about where they had been going because they had so many memories. A lot of those people they're either traumatized, they were abused, mistreated, they are traumatized, and a lot of them after those days, they couldn't bond with other people anymore. So we are talking about plenty of bad memories and people whose lives were changed by their vacation stay for the rest of their adult lives. There's a problem though, because a lot of those people were quite little. We will talk about that later when they were sent away to the vacation homes. Most of them were between 4 and 14 years of age. The average age, though, is between 6 and 9 years old. And plenty of children weren't only sent away to vacation homes once or twice, but they were sent 3 times, 4 times, just several times. And quite often they don't really know where they were going to. In other cases, they know what places they were sent to, but in their memories, they can't really tell you what of the places was bad and where their good memories are coming from. The Verschickungskinder have 2 homepages. There's 2 groups working on the same topic separately. And on their homepage, you either have the option to fill in a questionnaire with a lot of questions, where they're trying to find out how the stay affected their lives for the future. And you have the option of actually writing down your memories and to get in touch with people that went to the same homes in case you know where you went. The topic is that huge and that much all over the German media that a lot of the parliaments in Germany, especially in like Baden-Württemberg and North Rhine-Westphalia, where Bad Sassendorf is, they started putting it in parliament. I think it was last July or August. And now it needs to be researched. Like they want it to be, they want the history to be researched and they want to know what was going on. Why were children going on vacation? Who was running the homes? Who were the people working there? And why are there so many bad memories? So this is what people try to find out. With the next slide, I have to admit that I took this picture from the homepage of NDR, like a German TV channel. And all I want to show you is that the headlines are quite harsh. Of course, media have to be like that. It's good journalism. But it's a problem for people like us that want to work with social history projects, that want to talk to people, and that want to find out the truth behind everything. Looking at the media.
Sorry,
Jeanette, we still see the starting slide.
You still see the starting slide? Okay, yeah. Hold on. Should I try and stop the sharing and restart it?
Because, yeah, I think that would be the best way, yeah.
Ich glaube, Sie müssen nur die Präsentation starten, weil Sie noch, Sie sind in der Folienansicht. Vielleicht reicht das auch schon. Wenn Sie von Beginn an ganz links das Icon von Beginn anklicken, dann müssten Sie eigentlich in den Präsentationsmodus gehen und dann müssen Sie klicken lassen.
Ah ja.
Genau, sonst geht es auch händisch.
Ist es jetzt besser?
Ja, jetzt sehen wir das richtig.
Better now?
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Okay, so I will go back. This is the first slide that you saw for quite some time. This is one of the Catholic children's homes. We will look at that again later. We do then have children at the train station in Essen that are taken away to be sent away to their vacation homes. And this is the picture that I took from the NDR site. Okay, so looking at the newspaper headlines, one big German newspaper wrote, it was a torture home. The Süddeutsche Zeitung, which is also a quite big national newspaper, vacation home, beatings, bondage, and thirst. And the RD documentation, tortured and humiliated. There were quite a lot of documentaries in TV as well. And the problem with those is that they're basically just trying to focus on one side. And they always talk about perpetrators and victims. And another word that they always like to use is Nazi education, Nazi pedagogics, well, like education system. And that is quite troublesome. The subline under the picture says, homesick and humiliated, documentary about sent away children. And the thing about the perpetrators, the problem is that the media and also some research groups make it look like everybody who worked in one of those homes was a culprit and hurt children. And that makes it rather tricky and complicated to approach people, to talk to them, and to actually make other spa towns open up about their own histories as well, because a lot of the people that work there are pretty much as shocked as everybody else by reading those news and finding out about the media. So just that as a background. So this movement pretty much started or came up right at the point when we started trying to figure out the history of sent away children and homes in Bad Sassendorf. The only difference is that once we started at the same time, we still thought it would be a good story, like that we could be talking about the children's paradise in Bad Sassendorf. The next thing I want to do is just to widen up the topic and not only talk about Bad Sassendorf, is that I want to show you this map of spa towns or cities that used to produce salt from brine. Bad Sassendorf is just in the middle of all the other places, and then
We
from the left,
we still see the children's slide. Somehow we don't see them
why
moving.
does it keep going back? But you saw a couple of them, did you? You saw them?
No, we saw the first and this one. Somehow it doesn't seem to work. Shall I perhaps then start to move the slides? If you stop the screen sharing, I can sort of open the slides you sent me and try whether I can do it then in parallel.
I stopped it. Could you try it? I'm so sorry, it's not working.
Yeah, so we have some hiccups today, so unfortunately. But I open it now and try to share my screen, and then we see how it goes. Okay. And that should be the right one. Okay, and I see. Okay, yeah, we can run through it, right? Sort of, that's what we described.
Yeah,
here we
see. What we want to see.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, this is what we want to see. Bad Sassendorf is right in the center, and from the left we have Unna, Werl, Soest, we don't have to talk about today, but Waldlisborn, Bad Westernkotten, and Salzkotten. And all these places are located quite at a line where we have a lot of brine fountains, pretty much. It's like the Westphalian spring line, and most of those places used to produce salt. And afterwards, they all turned into spa towns that also had children's spa vacation homes. But none of them had as many as Bad Sassendorf. So most of the places had 1 or 2 vacation homes where they were boarding between 60 and 150 children at a time. Bad Sassendorf, as we will see in a second, had a lot more of those homes. Okay, we could move on to the next slide. The beginnings. I already told you that the Verschickungskindler mostly say that the whole story began after 1945, but we do have to go back a little more in history. The first spa vacation homes are built in the late 1870s, 1880s, or before 1900. And it's just coming up as, well, they want to treat children that are actually sick. It's just after the German, well, health insurance system or its predecessor was pretty much invented. So what we have is that they want to treat children, and these children are actually sick children. They have tuberculosis, they have lupus, they have scrofula, which is a disease that pretty much nobody is talking about anymore today. It has something to do with your lymph nodes, but it could also affect your bones, your skin, and your eyes. We then have those homes in World War I, where children malnourished, weak and sick were sent to the countryside to recover and to recreate. We have one home in Bad Sassendorf that was pretty much only existing during that time. Later on, we have Weimar Republic, where they extend the German welfare system, and we just still have problems with the same diseases, especially in the industrial towns in the Ruhr area, but also in the industrial part of the Sauerland, which is an area, well, a little bit south of where Bad Sassendorf is. So those children are sent to the vacation spa homes to be treated, to get brine bath, and well, to pretty much maintain their health or to make them healthy again or make them regain their health. And then we have the time after 1945, where those vacation stays were pretty much used as prevention. So obviously, right after World War II, children were in need, they were malnourished, they were sick, they were weak. They had to go to a recreation place to regain their strength, but it turned into a big part of the insurance system. Like, you didn't want people to get sick anymore, so you tried to send them away before they could even get sick. And yet, still, there were some children that had tuberculosis, they were rheumatic, and they had certain diseases. The movement reaches its peak around, well, in the 1950s and 60s. And after we notice that the homes, like the vacation homes, complain that there aren't that many people or that many children sent to them anymore. And that is a huge problem, because they are supposed to make money. So if they aren't filled out, if there aren't all beds filled, if they have 150 beds, but only 50 children coming in, it doesn't pay off for them. So we also have parents that don't want their children to miss school, because those vacation times, I mean, they weren't just during summer vacation or school vacation, but they were running the recreation vacations all through the year. So you didn't want your child to miss school. So by the 1970s and 80s, it's pretty much declining. Okay, we could go on to the next slide. The target groups. What kind of children were actually sent to those vacation homes? First of all, it's important to see that there was something like a posting station. In the beginning, the children weren't moved that far away from their own hometowns because they couldn't transport them. So the places were in the vicinity to their hometowns. But later on, they were moved pretty much all over Germany. They sent children from the North Sea coast down to the south. They sent people from the south to the north, to the Midlands, wheresoever. And there were posting stations that were pretty much figuring out where those children were coming from and where they were supposed to go to. Especially in Bad Sassendorf, a lot of the children were coming from the surrounding industrial centers. I already told you the Ruhr area and the Sauerland. But later on, we had children coming in from Hamburg, from Hanover, from the very south of Germany. That's where we had eyewitnesses from. And I recently talked to a lady that came from Schweinfurt, which is another huge industrial city close to my hometown in northern Bavaria. A lot of the children were sick. They had a medical diagnosis. We talked about tuberculosis, malnutrition, scrofula. Later on, it changes, especially after 1945, looking at the 1950s and 60s. Those children weren't sick anymore. I mean, a couple of them were, but most of them were, if you ask them, they say, Well, I was a little shorter than everybody else. I was a skinny child. No, I wasn't sick. So it is enough to just be, I think nowadays you would call those children normal children. They just weren't bigger build or anything. They were just plain normal. In some areas, we know, though, that every child had to go to the recreation vacation before it was sent to school. We also have children that were sent to vacation from socially weak families because they thought they were doing something good for their child. They couldn't go on vacation with the family, so it was a good opinion for the child to see something else. There were children from troubled families meaning something like your parents were divorced, your family had a lot of children, and your mother wasn't feeling that well anymore, or your mother just had another child and she needed a break. So all the other children were sent away on vacation. Looking at the ages, most of the children were between 14 to 14 years of age. We know that there were also children smaller than 4 years old. Like we had one eyewitness talking to us, and she said that in the vacation home that she worked at, they had children that were like 2 years old that couldn't even remember their parents' faces once the child was picked up. Okay, the next slide, please. Okay, and the process. One of the things we wanted to know, and I have to admit that we're still not quite sure how one child ended up in one vacation home and another one in another vacation home, but we basically figured it out. So we have to distinguish that there are two different ways of going to one of those vacations. One of them is by the town or the welfare or health office in your town organizing it. That means that you have to show up at the office, or an employee of that place shows up at your doorstep and is telling you that your child, well, is eligible to go on this vacation, or that your child looks a little sickly or a little skinny. So what happens is you have a doctor's appointment, and the doctor is telling you that you should go, you or your child should go on this stay away vacation. And the insurance pays for it. The parents always have to pay a certain part, but it is all organized by the posting place. They coordinate, and there's one extra office in North Rhine-Westphalia that coordinates the trains for the children's posting. So there's one office that does nothing but make sure that the children take the trains. We will talk about the situation with the trains later on too when we come to the eyewitnesses' stories. With the Welfare and Health Office, it is like that the insurances or the cities themselves, they book a certain amount of beds in the vacation homes. So let me say, like the city of Essen buys 15 beds in Bad Sassendorf, and some places, like some cities, even have like their own vacation home where they send children from their town or city. The other option is organized by the parents. We have some places in Bad Sassendorf where we know that they were privately run, and those people sometimes would still rent out a certain amount of beds, I say beds or places, to cities, but quite often it was parents that were, well, better off financially that would ask personally if their child could stay at this place. And in this case, they would do the brine bathing and all the other medical procedures at the place and where everybody else was doing it in town. Okay, we could do the next slides. Well, talking about the history of spa vacation homes in Bad Sassendorf, we have to look back a lot. The first of it was the Kinderheilanstalt. It's the healing institution for children by the Inner Mission Club of the County Mark. They started quite little. When they started opening this little place, they only had 6 children that they were taken in. And quickly they added building after building. And at their peak, they could board 380 children at a time. The place was supported and organized by, actually I'm missing with it, they were Protestant nuns, diaconisse. Well, they were pretty much run by Protestant nuns that were from Bielefeld. And what we know about this place is that they were always short on staff. It used to be a beautiful place, but they were always short on staff, and they had plenty of children to take care of. If you look at the whole setup, we see that there are a lot of places that open up before 1945, but not all of them are open continuously. Quite interesting too is Haus Hapen, which was open as the Emperor Wilhelm and Empress Auguste Victoria home for children of the Hartner Mining Company. So we have big companies that open their own homes for the children of their employers. And this home was used from 1907 to 1972, and they could hold between 14 and 15 children. In war times, the home was actually used for something else, but most of the time it was for children. We then had the Israelitic Kinderheim, Israelic home for children, but they actually took in people with all confessions. In the same year, we have another private one, the private children's sanatorium, Haus Lüsse, with a doctor named Lüsse. And he could hold 14 children in his home. And he was offering pretty much those private recreation vacations. Then we have the one I was talking about before, Kinderkurheim der Stadt Essen, like the children's spa vacation home of the town of Essen. It's quite interesting there too, because Essen is one of the towns, we saw that at the archives, that planned on buying some places for children of the town of Essen in the other places in Bad Sassendorf, but they were completely booked out for years. So there was no other option but like building their own. We have another Catholic one that was pretty much built around the same time. The history of the Catholic one is quite interesting to me, because all of the other places pretty much try to tell you that they take in children from all confessions. It doesn't matter if they are Jewish or Protestant or Catholic, but when they are building the Catholic spa vacation home, they collect money, and they pretty much tell everybody that it's a shame that the Catholic children have to go to the other spa vacation places to seek recreation. We have another big one, which is the children's spa vacation home of the German clerks. That opened in 1928. We didn't have it for that long. And then in 1960 to 1987, this was Haus Hamburg, which was run by the German insurance company DRK. They always had around 100 children, which is a lot to board as well. And Haus Hamburg is one of the places that we have a couple of eyewitnesses from, and it's a house where we also have the problem that there might have been sexual abuse and harassment against children. What we have, plentiful, because we don't even know how many privately run bed and breakfasts in towns we had, because they are mushrooming all over Bad Sassendorf, especially after World War II. In the 1950s, we have like at least 10 to 15 of those pensions that took in children. And you would think that they were rather small. Some of them didn't have more than 3 to 5 children, but there are actually privately run places that have up to 20 or 30 children that they board. Okay, we could keep going on. So that's just two impressions. The picture on the right is the Kinderheilanstalt, like the first one that was founded. It's a huge complex. They have about 6 buildings, and the one on the left is the Catholic Children's Home. Okay, next slide, please. About the research projects, we started working on the project itself, trying to figure out why Bad Sassendorf was the paradise of children in 2017-18. Together with the University of Münster, we started an oral history project. We were aiming for the students learning how to write a guideline for interviews, and that is what they did. And the students started interviewing people like eyewitnesses that had been to Bad Sassendorf recreation homes as children. In 2019, we had another course at the university. We improved the guideline, and then there were more interviews to be had. And in 2020, we participated in the citizen science project. I mean, it was some kind of competition that we could do. And we tried to, we wanted to use what we found out in the interviews and somehow make it understandable for people that cannot get the whole story. And what we noticed during the interviews, we will see that with the next slide when we talk about the interviews themselves. It's quite personal, and the memories, it's something you have to use the emotion to make understandable to everybody else how those children must have felt. On the top left, we see another building of the Kinderheilanstalt, which is called a barrack, which is like a building that they used for hospitals. There's supposed to be a lot of light coming into it. It's a 1-floor building. And on the bottom left, we have the predecessor building of the Haus Hamburg, the spa vacation house of the clerks. And on the right side, we see the background of a little commercial booklet. All of those places had commercial booklets. So if you open it up, you will have plenty of pictures that showed you the dining room, a room with toys, the garden, and yeah, that's how they were pretty much doing the commercials for the spa vacation homes. The next slide, please. What did a day of one of those children look like? If you go into the archives or read about it in the chronics of the Kinderheilanstalt, for example, it was a lot about eating. The children had to get strong. And as we could see in the picture, there are a lot of children eating at the same time. There's the first breakfast and the children taking a brine bath. There's another breakfast. Then there's lunch. There's a lot of resting. That's what people complain about too. They had to rest. They had to sleep a lot. There is some playtime. They're going for a walk, mostly to the graduation, to or around the graduation towers. Then there is dinner. The children are weighed and they go to sleep. So this is just pretty much the average day. On the top right, that is also, that's also the Kinderheilanstalt. You can see the graduation tower, the gymnastics room, and also one of the sleep rooms. Next slide, please. What we did is we had about 35 interviews that we recorded, and we used the improved guidelines to talk to the people. What we wanted to find out about was pretty much what did those children experience during their stay? How was their everyday life, and how did they feel going to their recreation home? And in addition to the 35 interviews, we had 23 people that pretty much just wrote down their memories following the guidelines or writing us their memories. there are a lot of memories that are pretty much in all of the interviews. One basic thing is being weighed in public. The weight of the children is important because there's pretty much no other way to prove that the child is healthy. So if the child weighs more by leaving the recreation place, if it gains 1 pound, 2 pounds, or 3 pounds, it was a success. If those children lost weight but were not there to lose weight, they were being frowned upon, they were yelled at. Like, you were not supposed to lose weight, you had to gain weight being on your vacation stay. A lot of people were complaining about the rest cure, Liegehallen. They had to rest a lot because they were supposed to gain weight, but also because the brine bath makes them tired. So obviously you have to rest. You're supposed to regain your strength. But that was a negative memory for a lot of people. The wooden tubs that were used for bathing in the brine, they were either memorized as something great, like with a nice smell, a nice warm bath, but other people were terrified. We have people that are traumatized from bathing in brine because the children were small and they were supposed to be, we could see it in the picture actually, there's the two wooden tubs. And when the children were smaller than these two, they were pretty much forced to be that deep in the water that like just their mouth would be out of the water. They had to be completely covered. They were supposed to be silent. They were not supposed to move. A lot of people report being forced to eat. Some of them even had to eat like their throw up when they couldn't eat the dishes anymore and they threw up. They had to re-eat it. They were forced to eat it. When you wet your bed, you were punished. A lot of the recreation homes even tell you that they would not take on children that wet their beds, but it seems to happen all the time. And the child that actually wets his bed is punished in the morning. They make it pretty much public that this person like peed their sheets or something. So everybody was super scared. People tell us that they were feeling helpless. They were scared because they knew that if they did something that wasn't right, they would be in trouble. There was a lot of discipline. There was a lot of punishment, and the children were scared of the punishment. There was a lack of communication, and that starts with the train ride or with the travel. Because most of those children didn't even know where they were going. They were found at like a German train station. That's where they had to meet somebody who was supposed to take them to the spa vacation place. And those children had like a sign around their neck. And it said, well, this child is going to Bad Sassendorf. This child is going to Baden-Baden. This child is going to Bad Kissingen. I don't know. So they were sent away for 6 weeks. And I mean, when I was 5 years old, I didn't know what 6 weeks meant. And when they tried to communicate, let me say you were old enough to write a letter home to your parents, and you were supposed to write home to your parents. And you wrote, well, I don't like it here. It's terrible. I'm forced to eat. I'm not having fun. Come pick me up. Those letters were not sent out. Like the letters were, you had to show them to the nuns, to whoever worked there. And when there was something bad in there, they were forced to write something new. Like, I had a great day. I went swimming. I'm feeling great. I gained weight. A lot of people tell us about monstrous creatures with white hats, which is like Catholic or Protestant nuns. And what we see here is that it just appears that a lot of people didn't even have like a personal touch, a personal connection to the people. All they saw was like the uniform. Fear, being scared, being nothing but a number. Upon arrival, a lot of children were, well, they had their luggage, but they couldn't keep it. If you brought your own toys, they were taken away from you. And a lot of them were told that they have a certain number, which is the number of their closet or the number of the hook where their stuff was supposed to be put. And in quite a lot of memories, those people remember that they weren't even called by their name, that sometimes they were nothing but that number for the 6 weeks. If there were siblings being sent away together, quite often they were separated because there were different groups of, young girls, young boys, big boys, big girls, and they were all kept separately and didn't really have any connection. Sometimes they would eat together, but usually they would not. Like the children were kept in their groups. And actually that's easy to explain, because what we noticed for all of the places is there are a lot of children that need to be taken care of, but there isn't a lot of workers being able to take care of the people. The next slide, please. And looking at the interviews, we tried to pick out the most frequent ones to make them accessible through a fictional story. But the story is the story that we made up from everything that we found out about in the archives and in those interviews. And we made up a fictional character, and it's a girl whose name is Petra. And we want to tell Petra's story in the village of Bad Sassendorf when you go to the different stations that the girl must have went through if she had been a spa vacation child here. The most important ones is arrival and departure. I told you already that the children mostly came by train. None of them seems to have liked the travel time to come here. Those trains must have been super crammed up, overfilled. The children didn't really have anything to drink. They basically, there must have been like there were ladies that actually, helped the children on the train ride, but they didn't really know the children. And even there, it was too many children for too little people taking care of them. So they were put in the train and they were let out at their destination, but they didn't really know where they were. Then we have the arriving at the institution, where you have like a doctor's appointment. You have to get undressed in front of everybody else. Your weight, they check your weight first. And you have to go to the bathroom first, and then they check your weight, so you're lighter. And once they send you home, they weigh you again, but not before. You can't go to the bathroom before, so you're heavier. They take away your stuff and you're forced to go into your rooms. Then we have the first night in the dormitory, where everybody's being homesick, and there might be children that wet their beds. For wetting the bed, the problem is that we know that for a lot of places here, even in the 1960s and 70s, they did not have bathrooms on the floors where they had the bedrooms of the children. So they used something like a bucket, and they weren't allowed to switch on the light. So that's how those accidents happened. And then they actually had some children that did wet their bed and came like that. The dining room situation, all of those children, or most of them, tell us that they were forced to eat and that the food was terrible. That's interesting and not easy to value, because we also talked to a lady who was running the kitchen in one of those places, and she had a really hard time understanding that, because she said, well, what we cooked so well, we did everything so well, how could that happen? We had one guy who was really traumatized from the foods. Then another point is walks. A lot of people remember walking and the leisure time that they spend close to the graduation towers. And talking about leisure time and play, there were games, but there was no free play time. The children were playing games where everything was in order. Everything had to be structured, because you had so many children, it just had to work out. Then there's the bathing in the brine that we just talked about. Communication is a big problem, because they were feeling helpless. They couldn't just call their parents. They were away for 6 weeks. And even when they left the vacation home, they didn't know if, their next destination would be their home or if they were sent somewhere else. So there's this big feeling of insecurity. It's quite rare that there are friendships because every child is pretty much for itself. They are in big groups, sometimes even up to 25 children are in one group and 1 or 2 employers are taking care of them. I think there were 1 or 2 people that told us that they actually made friends or a camaraderie. Then there's a departure with the feeling of insecurity. You don't know, are you really going home? Some children are not allowed to depart because they didn't change the weight or, they had to stay longer. And then we have the aftermath because a lot of children or a lot of people, eyewitnesses told us that they were actually changed, that there's another doctor's appointment when they come home and they say that, they weren't healthier. They couldn't trust their parents anymore. They couldn't trust anybody anymore. And that pretty much this day changed their whole life. Could we please change the slide? So this is Petra and the app that we're trying to put her in. Petra is a girl. She's pretty much an average person. She's anybody, like an average child that went to the recreation places. She's 8 to 9 years old and she's born in Dortmund, which is about an hour from here. She's from a working class family. Her father is working in the steel industry and her mother is a homemaker. She has older siblings and one of her brothers has been to a spa vacation place before and he actually loved it. He said the food was great. It's just like mom's food. Don't be scared. Everything is going to be great. So Petra is sent to Bad Sassendorf in 1965 and everything turns out to be a little different. Is she sick? No, she's a little skinny, she's weak, and her mother actually is the one that needs a break. And her character, she's supposed to be lively, open-going, curious. She would love to roller skate. I think that says a lot about her. And we're trying to integrate her story in the app. And it's supposed to work like that. Like right now, you need a QR code. And the person could be placed on the QR code. And once she's placed there, she would appear right in front of you and just tell you her story. And considering the points of interest, we had on the last slide, she will tell her story. And the students in the last course were making up that story and creating her words. Okay, go to the next slide. As you saw, the historical analysis is still a work in progress, and not just in Bad Sassendorf, but for pretty much most of Germany. What we do here is happening in a lot of German spa towns. The initiative of the Verschickungskinder is doing a lot. They do their own research. They have different teams that go into the archives. They do talks and seminars, presentations. They have meetings. They have certain groups actually for every for certain German spa towns, but I think it's quite a lot right now. They have their own groups where the victims or former centigrade children could talk about their memories and where they kind of find out more about what happened to them. And what I think is quite interesting is a cooperation between the group doing the research in Baden-Württemberg, because they have a cooperation with the Hochschule für Medienpädagogik in Stuttgart, and they were doing something quite similar than what we did, because they had students, it was not students that studied history, they do media education, and it was really interesting to see what they did working with the eyewitnesses. I will show that on the last slide. Yes, and there are also insurance companies like the DRK with Haus Hamburg that are actually trying to figure out their own story and that hire historians to go into the archives and find out what happens. one of the big problems is that we don't, well, that different areas like the welfare state or different archives didn't know that they heard certain things. Like when we hear about the mistreatments and the abuse, you would think that there has to be some kind of control, like somebody has to find out what is going on there. And what we found out is that there is actually, there are complaints, and the complaints are followed by visits to those spa vacation homes. And there are certain things that are named, like there aren't enough toys, there aren't enough bathrooms. It's not good that the children are forced to go to the bathroom at a certain time. So there's a list of things that need to be changed. But going back to the archives and just going through the files, you see that they pretty much name the same problems year over year and nothing happens. So yeah, the next slide, please. So what that group in Stuttgart did is they had different courses too. So what we see here is the result of 2 college classes, and they worked in different groups. Each group did like one digital event. So this one place, they did a digital memory room. And that is a place where I think that the person's name is Fritzi. And with Fritzi, you could actually just do the whole procedure from being at home to going to the recreation home to come back again. Like, what are the steps that are taken and what happens there? And it's like a cartoon. So that's how they made it up. And it's a really nice story. The other thing that they have on their website, it's on the website of the Baden-Württemberg Sent Away Children's Research Group, is Schein versus Realität. And what they try to show there is that, well, the difference between what the children were writing in their postcards, where everything is positive, we liked it, we are having a good time, and what they actually felt in reality. It's like a page flow, and there are different stories. They do have an Instagram channel where they show the stories of different children. It's quite personal. And then they actually have a 360 fictional spa vacation home where they show you certain rooms, like the arrival hall, a bedroom, and actually I forgot the last one. They have the arrival hall, the bedroom, and I think the bathroom. Yeah, and this is where I would like to stop, but I would really invite you to look at those websites because they're quite interesting. I'm sorry, I was a little too long.
No, we started later, so it's all fine. And it's a very interesting and obviously very touching story as well that you presented to us. I think we can open the floor now for questions and comments. Thomas, please.
Yes, I hope you can hear me all.
Yeah.
Okay, yes, you never know with the techniques. I have just a few minor points about the supervision, the problem of the supervision of those homes. Perhaps there was I think 5 years ago, a very good film in the cinema, a Danish film about that problem. You probably may know it, about the problem of supervision, people coming from the outside and in fact are deceived by the authorities of the house, so to say. I don't remember the name. I think it's 5 years old. Perhaps you know the film. It's not especially in such a place, but it's a child home. And then in Denmark, I think in the 1960s or early 1970s it was. That's my first remark. And then you had just a short question, factual question. You talked about industrial towns in the Sauerland. Do you mean Hagen, Wuppertal, Iserlohn, Lüdenscheid? What is meant with that? That's my second point. And then the biggest question would be, are there parallels in the rest of Europe about so special of those sanatoria, cohorts, especially programs for children to send to? That would be at the moment my 3 points.
But the first point, unfortunately, I do not know the movie, but I will try to figure out what it is, because that would be quite interesting. But what I can tell you about the supervision is that we still know the same thing. It's that they were informed, like the places knew when somebody would show up.
Exactly.
So it's you could prepare, and if you still had the problems going on, it says quite a lot. About the industrial towns in the Sauerland, that's exactly the areas that I mean. Hagen, Iserlohn, Wuppertal. So that is the area that the children were coming from, but then later on from all over. Like, we even have certain groups that keep on coming in from Berlin.
So far.
And the third question, I have to admit that I don't know about that. I know that if we look back to the early history, the first of those recreation homes for children, they are found in England. But I actually don't know, and that will be interesting to me too. Like, if any of you know if there are similar, programs in Europe.
Okay.
Yeah, Henrike, do you want to jump in on that right away?
Yes, thank you very much for this very interesting talk concerning perils. I know that there are the children's colonies in Italy, in fascist Italy, and this was a Mussolini-inspired program. And I happen to be in Cesenatico, which is at the Adria, and that's about 70 houses for children's cures. And this is a very important topic in concerning the Italian spa research, and it's an impressive place. And supposedly that would be an interesting parallel in terms of historical comparison. And that would lead to my question, because you mentioned this aspect of perils or accusations that in the Verschickungshaus culture, Nazi methods were practiced, something which you find in the headlines, and by the way, as well in information text concerning a documentary theater play, which is taking place, having its premiere in May in Hamburg. And my question would be, what period do these accusations address? Is this concerning the period of the Third Reich, or is the idea that after the war, these practices and this mindset is still present in these children's cures homes, or actively developed? So if you could just shortly comment on that.
Actually, they mean after the Third Reich, because what they believe in is that you have the same personnel. Actually, for a couple of places, it is like that. But we've had at least 800 of those homes even after 1945 all over Germany. And for, I think, 3, they proved that they were former Nazi doctors working there. But what they found out, or what they are arguing with, is that the background, it's the same people working there. So they have the Nazi education mindset. You have to be harsh. Like, if you look at Johanna Hara, it's like a pedagogics book for German mothers in the Third Reich, where you're supposed to not really give your child that much attention. If it cries, you just let it sit and you do nothing, because if you keep picking it up and you keep taking care of it, and this is pretty much what they think is still happening after World War II. So you have the same people, and they have used the same methods that they were used during the Third Reich. But what we think is, I think that could be true for some places. But another problem that we have, and that is pretty much as strict, as if you look at those Protestant places where we have the Protestant nuns, they are quite harsh. or nuns in general, they have a certain hierarchy, especially even after World War II. We know that they have the people that are the diaconesses, and we have people that they are called free helps. So they are testing if this kind of life is what they want to do. And they are below the diaconesses. And so we have this strong hierarchy in certain systems, and the strength, the punishment that is not only coming from the Nazi education, that is also in, like a general mindset in that time, and it could have had more reasons. But I think it is problematic to just say that the whole story, because there are just too many places. It's not just Nazi education. That is just not reaching far enough.
Mhm.
I'm sorry.
Yeah,
They
sorry.
don't even. It's
Go
like
ahead.
everybody. Okay,
Go
I
ahead.
try.
Go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah. So they don't even, sometimes if you look at certain publications, they don't even, distinguish between the times or define what they mean by Nazi education. So the word is just there. It's this big wall that is right there, instead of trying to look behind and what other reasons could have been there.
Okay, Astrid wants to comment on that, and I would like to jump in on some of the aspects as well. So, Astrid, please.
If you want to comment on it, then you go first, Christian,
Okay.
and then I'll come up.
Yeah, because I mean there are two things. I mean, fascist Italy. You're not surprised when I sort of come with my Soviet history things, and I've been even touching upon that a bit in my own research and writing. But from a different perspective. I mean, the Soviet system was obviously following the general developments of spa culture, spa medicine, and also the kind of ideas about health and health preservation as the German system as well. But obviously there was even larger ideological kind of reservation to have families spend free time together, right? So it's very well known that in the communist system of pedagogy and upbringing, the pioneer camps and these kind of peer group ideas are widespread, and so were health and spa installations created for children. I mean, that predates even the Soviet Union. Sort of, you have the first kind of children's spas emerging around 1900 as well, so as part of a pan-European development. But it is rather there that sort of the other alternative, and that would be my first question, is this kind of mother and child cures that are sort of the alternative model, right? They are slow to come, but they emerge in the Soviet Union around, I mean, so the discourse is early as perhaps the late 50s, but in practice they appear in the 1960s. So my question would be, how do the Verschickungskinder sort of relate to this idea of mother and child being sent to a spa together? The second thing that sort of I find very interesting, and we have had one other seminar on that topic already, is the people who work in the spas. And sort of, I mean, it's not just obviously Nazi people, because perhaps there wouldn't have been enough of them, perhaps there would have been, but I mean, it's the whole structure of employment in these spas, and particularly in the smaller places, right? The business is seasonal. So the people have to recruit for several months a much higher amount of workforce than for the rest of the year, which usually leads, at least as I can see, to work in these spa places being something for people who have no or low qualifications. There is not much of a selection because they are direly needed, and it's a kind of mixture of lacking professionalism and kind of disinterest in what they're doing that also kind of adds to this cruel atmosphere and perhaps even mistreatment of children. Could you comment on that perhaps as well?
To the first question, considering the mother and child cures, that is actually an aspect that we haven't looked at yet. I know that we have one home in Bad Sassendorf, the Josephinum, where they started offering that, but I think that wasn't even up to the 1960s and 70s. And the place was much smaller than all the other homes that we had. The only thing I could say is what they're doing right now, because the Kinderheilanstalt, they actually changed it into the Kinderfachklinik, and it's the only clinic that is still going on today. And of course, they offer these, and they offer even treatments for the parents and the children together. So, but besides that, I'm sorry, I can't answer your question. Considering the second question, I think there is definitely a lack of qualified employees working at the children's homes, but there also are a lot of qualified people. What I think is interesting, we found some data where there was obvious that in the two homes, we even had a lot of girls coming in from the Netherlands, which I never thought possible. Like, who would travel from the Netherlands for a job like that? And you're right, it's seasonal work, but here I think it started in the 1940s that they actually have it for the whole year. We have summer and winter recreation areas, but we still have quite long work days. Like, those people, they get up with the children, they prepare the breakfast, they wake up the children. They have to be always on point. They have to make sure. Just imagine you have 25 4-year-olds and they have their appointments during the day, and you even sleep next to them. Like, we know that a lot of the places that the personnel, they didn't even have their own room, or they did have their own room, but it had a window where they could peek into the bedroom of the children. So they were pretty much never off. I think they had one day off a week. And besides that, they were just working and working and working. At the archives in Lemgo, there was a report of a girl that was interning in one of the children's homes. And they left her alone with 40 children on her first day of the internship during lunchtime. So I hope that answers the question, but it's a big problem. And we also found that in the supervision reports, like the supervisors complain that certain homes have to hire more experts, like more preschool teachers or a psychologist if they have certain groups, because even the indication keeps on changing. But it doesn't happen. They don't hire more people because they would have to pay more people. And looking at the church-run places, you have the strength, and a lot of people that weren't used working with children. They might have been nurses, but not all of them were qualified to work with children. So usually the preschool educators or school educators were mixed up with somebody who was free help and who didn't have, like a background in taking care of children. And then you have plenty of work without breaks.
Yeah. Astrid?
Yeah, okay, thank you very much for this paper. Yeah, I have sort of one question and one comment and question link. The question, and we had it before when you referred to the European context, I mean, the things that you reported about, these were all kind of post-45 West German places and contexts. Do we have any comparison with East German places and practices? Is there any research going on in that regard? That was my question. And the other thing, when you were talking, and I think Henrike gave us a link to a play that's being performed in Hamburg soon. And when you were talking, I thought of two books doing more the literary side of the project, where children, admittedly in sanatoria, but still the treatment of children was thematized. And you have exactly these things. You have that either the children are away from home for so long that they don't know their parents anymore, or the other way around, let's say mothers with tuberculosis are away from home so long that their children don't know them anymore. But I also found in one novel, in an English novel, lengthy passages about children being tied to the beds so that they don't escape. Now, I wonder, yeah, so we have this kind of the cultural side, if you like, yeah, that these things are coming up, that is being used to produce, as you did in your project, to produce fictional stories that, of course, yes, are there to convey truth. Is it also, I wonder, part of a larger wave, if you like, of making aware of and working through a history of abuse of children in church institutions, for instance, yes, in medical institutions, and I don't know where else. Yeah, so is it part of this larger wave of bringing this up and trying to work through this?
I definitely think it is part of that bigger movement, definitely, because it's gotten so big and it's all over. And I think it's just everybody is being more sensitive for those topics. And people are just, there were so many that even, I think it's the same with looking at whatever happened in the churches, the matters of abuse, that they couldn't talk about it because nobody would listen to them. And now is a time when you could open up, you could talk about it, you could say that it touched you and it hurt you. And we've had people telling us that they couldn't talk to their parents about it because their parents said, "Oh, you're lying, that is impossible," or that whatever happened to them was that terrible that they couldn't tell their parents about it. They just talked about it now, or started talking about it a couple of years ago. So I think it is definitely part of this movement. And it might even have been that the other things had to be first. So this one could, develop and people could start to open up. What books were those that you read? That's quite, I would like to note them down, or maybe you could write them in the chat.
Marshall, there's a book by Lieselotte Marshall. The English title is Tongue-Tied. The German title is Die verlorene Sprache. And that's 1997, translated, I think, in 2004. And then Linda Grant, The Dark Circle. That's you have sort of 3 youngsters coming into a tuberculosis sanatorium and trying to deal with the situation and to break out. But you also have these references, as I said, to the children there, and what's happening there. And that is that's 2016.
Okay, thank you. Because there was actually one book too. It's called Black Houses, that was written about the children's vacation homes. I just have to wait a second. Black Houses, Schwarze Häuser.
It's a German title.
It's a German title. Yes.
Schwarze Häuser. Do you have the author?
I will look it up in a second, or will come back to me.
Thank you very much. Yeah.
It's just out of my head for a second. Yeah. And considering the second question, for quite some time, it appeared that even the Verschickungskinder were just pretty much focusing on the West German side. But right now they're actively searching for children that were sent away in the DDR and East Germany. And it turns out that it was pretty much similar experiences. Like, I talked to 2 people that told me about their experiences, and they weren't great. But they're just starting to look into that. So they're a little behind the studies for the rest of the country. Okay.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, sorry.
Just about that being, well, you said there were held at the beds, we have that too. Like children were locked up in the basement. They were locked up in closets. They were, well, pretty much attached to the beds that they couldn't move away. So we have all those stories too.
So Henrike, you have another comment or question?
Yes, so I was impressed by the various ways you try to address this dark side of the spa, and what we call it a bit like the dark spa, and we are concerned with it from a transnational perspective concerning different aspects. This might be, unfortunately, a very actual, the relationship between war and sanatoria and spa towns. But this as well affects topics like abuse or the problematic of the children cures. And you were talking about how you prepare this research for a broader public with the Instagram account, with these fictional stories, preparing materials for visitors from Bad Sassendorf. And I was really impressed by your admittance that you started with this, like, it's paradise, and now you have to face a very different story. So from a practical point of view, I would be interested in how you deal with that between research, actual cures going on, and tourism maybe in the region or in Bad Sassendorf. So how does this transformation from the spa as a purely paradisiac place to tackling this dark history of the spa, which is an important topic, I think, for almost all the spas, but not all of them are already going in this direction. So that would be of interest for us. How are your experiences with communicating that to people?
Tricky. It's not easy, but I have to go back a little, because I think it is quite important that we've only had 35 interviews and the 23 people that wrote us, but we still have people calling today or every other week telling us about their memories. I think quite important is too, it's memories, and we all know what it means to work with oral history and parts of the brains and the parts that you do remember and parts that you don't remember. What is a problem in general, looking at the media, looking at our project, but also at others, is that we have a lot of bad memories, but we also have a lot of people that were sent away and it didn't do anything to them. Or we have people that call here and they tell me, I'm calling you just because I want to say that I had a great time in Bad Sassendorf. And or they don't even know, was it bad here or was it bad in another place? But still, we have to say that there were things that weren't right here in this town. And I think one of the things that is helping us today is the fact that that we could say that things changed a lot, like that the children's hospital that we have here now is just working completely different. And what we have another problem, and that is that of the people that worked at the places, because I have the feeling that a lot of them are, I think I mentioned it before, are as shocked as everybody else to hear the news and to hear about how those children felt or what happened in some of the houses. I even want to say that some of the people working there are as traumatized by reading the news than other people are. And with our tourism department, of course, they don't really think it's something that people want to see. Do you want to go on vacation and learn something about children that didn't have a great time here? While Bad Sassendorf they invested a lot of money. This is a beautiful place and it does have a bright future. And we want to talk about the dark side of the spa, but I still think it is quite important. And I think it must exist, it must be able to exist next to each other. Obviously, not everybody has to do the tour, but there's so many people that are interested in it. We have people, we actually have this little commercial wagon that we use at the cool park, at the recreation park here, to inform about other things that tourists could do. And there are a lot of people that just show up and ask my colleagues, "Oh, I was here before. I'm looking for this home. Do you know where it is? Could you tell us anything about it?" So even though that is not all of the tourists that we have here, I think it is important to offer something for the people that are coming back. Like even people that were here as children, a lot of them want to come back. They want to see those places again, if you could still see them, because a couple of them were torn down and are different clinics or buildings right now. But well, it is not easy, and not the whole town loves what we do, but we have to do it because we, I mean, we're trying to be neutral. We're the museum, so we have to be neutral looking at it, and we're trying to figure out, why did it go wrong? Why did they have those experiences? And yeah, but it's not, you were right, it's not always easy, because tourism itself and being a recreation place and this story doesn't go together that well. But I think the way we're doing it is in the app with the stories, we're trying to not actually put the worst stories on display, but we're trying to just go through the emotional experience, like being by yourself. Just picture yourself being all by yourself, being in Bad Sassendorf, arriving here and not knowing what the next 6 weeks would look like. So that's what we're trying to use, instead of being like, okay, this and that happened, because a lot of the really, really bad stuff, I mean, I think obviously whatever I told you about was bad, but there are way worse things. And we're trying to go through that emotion that was pretty much like an underline in all of the interviews that we've had.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I think also the idea to kind of narrate it in a way that gives a bit of agency back to these children is quite important, right? Sort of reproducing this kind of victimhood situation as something without an exit is probably nothing that would work very well with small visitors nowadays. I think sort of this is a very worthwhile and interesting project, and we've learned a lot today about both the history and also the way how one can work with that history in a spa town, in a spa place, for which we thank you quite a bit. We can perhaps take a last comment or question before we wrap up for today. Is there any other comment or question? Now, we will definitely stay in touch. I've seen that the chat has been filled with comments, suggestions, film titles, book titles. So this is certainly a topic that will keep us busy, and I think it will also will find a due place in our own research in the project. So thanks again for joining us, Jeanette, and we will have the next online seminar, hopefully with better functioning links from the start, then in May on the 20th, and looking forward, Kathleen, to yours and Evelyn's talk about Empress Sissi, something totally different, but also one of the pages of European spa history. So thanks very much, and goodbye to everyone. I stop the recording now.